So now we will be discussing about how the material world is created from the spiritual energies of the Lord and from the Sankhya Yoga philosophy, whatever we can understand a little bit. First important thing is from the Supreme Personality Godhead has got three different spiritual energies. One is the Sandhini energy, the creative energy which creates everything in the spiritual world. Samvit energy, but from which cognizance and life force emanates, and Ladini energy, from which all forms of pleasure and pain and anything in the spiritual world emanates from this feelings, basically. So once we understand this, basically, we can understand the basic conception. So Sandhini, because it's a creative potency, forms the ingredients for the material creation, which is pradhana. It's a transformation of this energy, this one. The Samvit and the Ladini potencies, they transform into the various modes of the material nature. The knowledge potency becomes the Tamoguna, and the Ladini gets transformed into Rajoguna, which is basically all pleasures in the material world. The mode of passion is nothing but the Ladini energy of Lord Krishna. So we have the pradhana, the basic ingredients from which the material world is created. So now we'll compare it to a computer system, a world of virtual reality. This material world is kind of a virtual reality, a world which exists in a sort of virtuality. It is real, absolutely, but it's created in a form of a virtual formation. So why is it virtual? There are maybe many reasons. One is the reason is that the world is created like a dream. Krishna wants us to feel that it's a dream. Although Krishna can create a world which is which the original potencies create the world, he can create the world in a way in which it's exactly the spiritual kind of creational potencies. He can do that. But then the problem would be when we do a lot of bad things in this material world. We hate Krishna, we do a lot of bad things, and then when we get out of the material world, it will be very difficult for Krishna to again re-establish our relationship with Krishna. We'll be saying, oh my God, I did so many bad things. But if this world were to be a dream, a combination done in such a way that you would say that it's not a reality, it's some kind of a dream. So then when we wake up from the dream, we immediately say, oh, it was not me, it was the modes of material nature, it was all these sort of things that made me do it. Actually, it was Krishna, one Krishna says, Prakriti Kriya Manani. And that shloka, if you can understand, is Krishna's great compassion and mercy. That it looks like as if he's saying that Vimudhatma, the soul is actually Vimudha. He thinks that he's a doer, but actually it's a kind of a very, very compassionate kind of statement by Krishna, where he's saying that actually you are not the doer, don't worry. So when you come back to the spiritual world, you were not the ones who did all of those things. It was just the three modes of material nature which forced you to do all those things. So he's ready to forgive everything. He's ready to forgive everything, basically. So Krishna's ready to really forgive us for everything, and he doesn't want to hold us responsible for whatever happens in the material world. So this world is not false. It is absolutely real. It's just created in a way which is slightly different from the way it is created in the spiritual world. Things are created in a different way in the spiritual world, and things are created in a different way in the material world. It's just a different way of creating, that's all. You can't say it's real, it's virtual, it's whatever. It's just that things are created in a different way, just to make the point that, we are not the ones who are doing things here. It's just like to create the perception of a dream. So it's real, but it's slightly different manifestation. So generally in the spiritual world, Sandhini creates everything. The trees are created by Sandhini, the bodies are created by Sandhini, the soul is created by Sandhini, everything is Sandhini. Samvit is just the cognizance potency, and Ladini is the pleasure potency which arranges Sandhini in such a way that the pleasure is enhanced, basically. So how Krishna's different leelas will take place. For that you require the base. The base is the Sandhini, the base is the bodies, the trees and everything. But the way it's decorated, the way it is So decorated in the way, in a way in which Krishna likes it. So that way, the way in which the things are done. So Sandhini is like the basic hardware structure, and Hladini and Samvit are the software structures which define how things will be done. So Sandhini is the, Samvit is the cognizance potency, the basic structural knowledge potency. You can say the very electricity by which the hardware and software, everything can be made to live. They become alive by this electricity. And that electricity is Samvit energy, that the life force of the living entities, the knowledge potency, the existence, the knowledge thing itself. So it's like electricity. And Hladini is the entire orchestration code that is written. Like, and you can say Radharani actually orchestrates everything. How the pleasure is supposed to flow, what is pleasure, how the pleasure is supposed to be done, in the very feeling of pleasure, the very feeling of thing is Hladini, and also how the whole world is arranged in such a way that pleasure can be enhanced. The entire creation of the spiritual realm, for example, how bodies of the gopis can be decorated in such a way that Krishna will be happy. So not in the feeling of pleasure, but anything related to pleasure, like the Sandhini is decorated in such a way. The very structures of the universe, spiritual world, is decorated by Hladini, basically. So it's not just the feeling of pleasure, but also everything else. Like so these two energies are in the spiritual world. They are basically the energies which act, and they create so many things. And Sandhini is the basic base. The Shuddha Sattva is basically the spiritual world. So if you see, if you just think about Sandhini and there is no Samvit and Hladini, that will only be Shuddha Sattva. It will be like just the creation, just the body of Krishna, just like something like Brahman, just like the body of Krishna, and just like the pure spiritual energy of Krishna. So without knowledge of Krishna, without pleasure potency of Krishna, it will be like that. So when this is predominant, this particular mode or potency is predominant, a person sees Brahman, Brahmajyoti, Sat Chittananda. So Sat realization is the Brahman realization. Only the structure is existing, but there is no knowledge about what the structure is. It is there, the knowledge is definitely there, but it is not predominant. These are the predominant. This becomes very dominant, and this becomes supportive. So Brahma Ananda is Hladini, also is present, Brahma Ananda, but that is supportive to Sandhini. So in the Brahman realization, these two play the supportive roles, whereas this is the predominant energy. In the Paramatma realization, you see the Lord in your heart. You see the Lord, and you just see, and you're just happy by looking at the Lord. You have a knowledge about the Lord, So, but there is no activities. There is no flow of pleasure in that sense. So this is predominant in that, where you actually know the Lord. You start knowing the Lord. You understand the Lord. Here you see the Lord's body, something like that. And here you start knowing the Lord's body. But here, when this becomes predominant, the body itself is not. The knowledge about the Lord, the Lord, everything about the Lord, the knowledge becomes, you just start looking at the Lord. You start understanding the Lord. That becomes predominant. And the bliss that you get from that also assists the Samvit energy. So in the Paramatma realization, in the Paramatma field of realizations, but when the spiritual world of Golok Vrindavan is the world of Hladini energy, where she is the predominating force, and everybody else supports her. The existence of Golok Vrindavan, the trees, everything are arranged according to her direction, and she is the force which is predominating in Golok Vrindavan. So if you see this energies, three energies, so because knowledge becomes ignorance in the material world, basically we are ignorance, and so basically ignorance is the material world, and existence is Sattva, or Shuddha Sattva is Sandhini, Sattva is material world, comes from this Shuddha Sattva. Hladini is Rajoguna, Hladini is also Ananda, and passion, Ananda, all these things are related here. So Rajoguna is basically, Prabhupada says that these three modes have a direct correlation with the three modes of the material nature. Of course, they are like shadow potencies, they're not the same potencies. Now, when they combine together into multiple forms, they form Parasara Shaktir Vivedheya Shurite. Unlimited energies of the Lord are formed by the combination of these energies, and their personality is distinct. Like Yogamaya may be a personality which is distinctly formed from these three energies themselves, and there are different personalities. So the energies do not exist separate. They always exist in a combined form. They exist as one spiritual energy. They never exist as separate energy. Separate means there is no separate energy existence. Only in an impersonal form they exist separately, but they exist as one energy. For example, if you see Hladini, Radharani. So if you see Radharani, she has a body. Where does bodies are created in the spiritual world? All bodies, include Krishna, everybody, all the bodies are created from the potency of Sandhini. So Radharani also has a component of Sandhini in her existence, and a component of Samvit, because he has cognizance. She's a cognizant energy. So cognizance comes from Samvit energy of the Lord. And she is a very personification of love of Godhead. So the other energies, she is the personification herself of the entire energy of Ladini. So if you say, now if her body, if you see, it's made up, it's Sandhini. They say that Krishna's body is pure Sandhini and Radharani's body is Ladini, the very personification. How do you understand that? That you understand because her body is arranged in such a way that gives pleasure to Krishna. So the Sandhini is arranged in such a way, the predominant force in that entire body of Radharani, the golden hue, the colors, the flowers, the lotus, everything in Radharani's body basically is not Sandhini, but it's under the condition of, under the predominant force is Ladini. So Radharani represents all the energies. Sometimes we say that the material spiritual world is represented by Chit potency. We say there is a Chit world and this is material world is a dead world. So that time Samvit represents when people are starting. Let's have some with Bhakti, Nam Aparad. So when the Nam is represented, the Bhakti is represented by Nam. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in Mother of Kandrumi. So there are different things which are represented, like in Nam Aparad. Actually, it is not Nam Aparad, it is Bhakti Aparad. But because Nam is representing Bhakti in that's why it's Nam Aparad. So any Aparad, like for example, considering an impersonal outview, or while doing bhakti, or while offending a Vaishnava who may or may not have actually spread the holy names. Even a Vaishnava who is a very great devotee of Lord Krishna, in some way, even you offend him, that is also Namaprad. So any kind of bhakti process which is offended, or you commit sinful activities, not just holy name, you commit any kind of sinful activities and purposely, that is also Namaprad. So because Nam is represents bhakti, so certain things represent. So similarly, Chit world, generally when we talk about the spiritual world, we talk about the living world, the living force, and we distinguish it like that's a living world and this is a dead world. So although there are three energies, many times in Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur's commentary on Brahma Samhita will say it's a Chit world, and Chit is the common energy which represents all energies. So one energy is known as the Chit energy because it's a living energy, and this world is a world of dead. So that's what happens. So basically, so that in that thing, the Chit cognizance represents, we say that it's a living world in the spiritual world and this is a dead world in the material world. So there the Chit potency represents the spiritual potency basically. So she is representing all the three energies sometimes when we are talking, but actually the spiritual world actually is completely Ladini world. She is predominant in that. So we will see that in that way. And now, so because the creative potency of the spiritual world, Balram creates everything, his expansion of Balram. So what expansion? Expansion means the Shakti of Sandhini, Balram Shakti only, everybody's Shakti, the Sandhini, the Shakti, the motherly Shakti of everybody. She's like the mother, she's like the sisterly Shakti, the knowledge potency, and she's like the lover of the Lord in that format. So if you see the potency of the Sandhini which creates everything, including Krishna's body is created by Sandhini, everything is created by Sandhini. And this energy basically also creates the very ingredients for the material world. Prabhupada says the entire material world, spiritual world, everything is created by Sandhini. He says in his lecture. So how? It happens by pradhana. The material ingredients of the world, it's a manifestation or a perversion of this energy which creates this particular energy or pradhana. It's like the computer, the entire cloud computational world in which the entire virtual world is created. When the pradhana is inactive, now the three modes are also, from these energies only, the three modes also coming. They are known as the efficient cause. They are like the cook. This is like the broth. This is like the ingredients for cooking. And then the cook comes. Cook is also the same person, and she starts cooking. And when she starts cooking, the various objects and the various sense of pleasures and everything is created. And the efficient cause is the cook, whereas the material cause is the ingredients which is cooking. So the ingredient is this. Now, how do you say efficient causes cook? So there are four efficient causes, they say. One is the Supreme Lord himself. Then there is the Supreme Lord in the form of time factor. There are activities. There is also the will of the Lord, which is known as providence. And then there is material nature, three modes of material nature. So how it's happening? basically it's the same thing. What is happening is the will of the Lord or providence is nothing but the one who is controlling the three modes of material nature. When the three modes of material nature become active, activities take place. When activities take place, that time comes into existence, because once something activates, when there is a record of certain things, when a thing moves from A to B, then time is set to have set into motion. Time is nothing but passage of activities over a particular matter. So when activities are set, that means time is come into existence basically. So time is nothing but activities which are carried out by the providence or will of the Lord, which is like the Lord who is working through the three modes of material nature. So all these efficient causes are known as the efficient cause, whereas pradhana is the material cause, the matter. So the pradhana, if you see here, what's happening is, so she creates the matter, and then through the three modes, when the three modes become active, like the computer starts booting. When the computer is not booting, the same thing is known as pradhana. When the computer starts booting, electricity starts flowing through the computer, and the computer starts booting, all the basic code starts executing, then it is known as Mahatattva at that point of time. Then we will come to the material world. From Mahatattva is called the Ahamkara. This is the cloud layer. Cloud layer. You know, in a virtual world, we play a game where everybody puts a headset, and then his ears and his hands and everything, he wears gloves, and he goes into the virtual world and he starts playing a game. So this is the virtual world for the soul. Ahamkara layer is the cloud computational layer, CLOUD. This is the cloud. It's a common layer, the cloud layer, which we call the virtual layer. Generally, when you play a game, there is a server. This is the server, SERVER. This is a server, and it's a cloud computational layer basically, from which everything is going to, all the software and all the things are going to be acting on this. It's a server from which you have your virtual identities, your virtual avatars in this virtual world are all stored inside this Ahamkara layer. On this Ahamkara layer, first of all, the Sattva Guna, the creative energy of the Lord, the Sandhini basically, which becomes perverted as Sattva Guna. So the Sattva Guna acts on this layer and creates the hardware. She is the hardware creator of the computer. Now, what is the hardware? Hardware is the mind and the sense devtas. Like, what is the sense devtas? They are like, there's Prajapatis. So many sense devtas are basically there. The mind and sense devtas, like even Agni is included. So basically, it's like the hardware for your interfacing with the virtual world. Like, you have a computer, you have got this headset by which you put on your head, and then the things come in front of your eyes, and then you have got gloves, and then you've got a joystick. And the hardware to interact with the virtual world, there is certain hardware by which you can move your hands and legs and everything. So that hardware is created by Sattva Guna. So actually, had the Sandhini or Sattva Guna been acting on this and created everything else also, like the trees and the sense objects and the fire, earth, water element, then we would have said that it's just the world is real, it's not virtual, because Sandhini is actually creating the whole thing. So because creation is done by Sandhini, but here what's happening? She only creates the hardware to interact with the Ahankara, basically. She only creates that much. So that's why this is virtual. So this is created in a different way. It's not false, it's not but it's just created in a different way. It's not the spiritual world, Sandhini creates everything. In the material world, Sandhini creates the instruments, and then she creates the basic server layer, and then everything is projected on the server layer. So it's just a different way of creation. You can't call it as a real or false or whatever, but it's a different way, so that you can feel that it's a dream. For the soul, you can feel it's a different reality. It's not real reality. And also, you're bound by the three modes. First, you're bound by the three modes because as a soul, you would never want to indulge in sense gratification. You would never do that. A nice guy would never indulge in horrible sexual activities or something like that. A very well-cultured person. So he has to be first intoxicated, and then he has to be forced by the prostitutes. Then he will do something like that. So intoxication is the avarnatmika shakti, which covers your intelligence. It makes you forget who you are, who is Krishna, everything. And then slowly the prakshepatmika shakti, which is the pleasure-giving shakti of this world, which kicks you away from Krishna and gives you pleasure from the material world. So the material world ka pleasure jo hai, like the sense pleasures of the material world, that is created, and you start running madly after the sense pleasures of the material world. So that's the prakshepatmika shakti, basically. So you can call Rajoguna is prakshepatmika shakti in one sense, because it's clearing the pleasures, the passion and everything, and the covering on your or your head, and your reality is removed, and everything is virtual world is created in front of you, and your reality, the real world, is taken away from you. The darkness that covers you and takes you into a virtual reality world makes you forget the real world and creates a virtual world in front of you. That is the ignorance layer of Tamoguna. basically, which is also somehow related to the knowledge potency of the Lord. Covering of your knowledge is done by the knowledge potency herself, and the pleasure potency herself is giving you pleasure in the material world. So that's why it's real, because these people are like the original people who also give you pleasure in the spiritual world. So they just are just transformations of these same things. So what happens is Sattva creates the mind and the sense devtas. Basically, sense devtas means not the real devtas, but the sense devtas is the posts for the sense devtas. Basically, just like you have a post for your various the hardware, basically. Then the hardware will be run by some devta. That will be another living entity who will be running it later on. But the basic structure of the hardware, which the hardware will be activated, the hardware structure for that particular, there's a Agni Dev is there, the hardware for Agni, by which you can interact with the fire element of the world. So all the structural hardware is created by this Sattva Guna, basically. As Sattva, this is the only reality in the world. This is why Sattva is reality, everything is illusion. When you come to Sattva Guna, you see reality, because you see this PC. This is the PC. This is the virtual headset, the PC that you see. This is the reality. When you come to pure Sattva, Shuddha Sattva, you will see basically the spiritual. This is basically more or less spiritual, because it's coming from the Sandhini direct vikar of that. So it's actually, it's like the wood and the tree and see, if you see in the virtual world, in the game world, what is reality? Reality is the PC and the hardware and everything. That is the reality. That's made from wood, from the real matter. But on the television set, when it connects to the cloud computational layer, and then what pictures you are able to see, the avatars that you get when you play the game of this world, that game that is being played, that's there in the virtual projection on the mind and the senses. The projection that's happening on the mind and the senses is the virtual world, the virtual reality realm. So let's see how that happens. Okay, so what happens is Rajoguna, which is the mode of passion, what it does is it interacts with the Ahamkara layer and creates. So this happens in the cloud. So you have an avatar of yourself in the cloud that is stored. That keeps on changing, the avatar. You come some human beings, some demigod, some doggy. All this is stored in the cloud server. It's not there here. Basically, your mind and senses are the only thing that you're connecting to the server, and then you're able to go to the virtual world, and everything, all the pleasures, pains, and the interactions with the sense objects, everything happens virtually in the virtual realm. So you're sleeping in the lap of Maya, and you're seeing this dream of Mahavishnu, and you're entering that dream. He creates through his modes and everything, he creates all these things in his dream, and then he also enters his own dream, Mahavishnu. So you go into this virtual rear of Ahamkara, and in this Ahamkara virtual world, you have a virtual avatar which keeps changing. So in that virtual avatar, what pleasures you are going to get comes from the sense pleasure organs. Basically, Rajoguna creates the sense pleasure organs. Basically, and the prana part of this there is prana, there is intelligence, and there is intelligence basically has the Gyanendriya, and the prana has the Karmendriya. So your movement in the virtual world, your pleasure interactions with the virtual world, you're acquiring the object of the virtual world. All these software things for your number of pleasure that you're going to get is software coded by the pleasure potency herself. So all the pleasures that you get is through the sense pleasures. That's the only pleasure in the material world, basically. So the sense pleasure is the organs for sense pleasure, and the organ, everything is your virtual avatar is stored inside the cloud computational layer by the Rajoguna or Ladini Shakti ka one particular part, which is actually giving you. So Prabhupada says, when the Ladini Shakti emanates from the living entity, it makes you mad of the material world. So that's exactly how you're going to be mad of. This is a Prakshepatmika part where you're going to be kicked out away from Krishna by, you'll be running after a girl or something else, because you're seeing the beauty part of the girl, which is actually Krishna's only energy, which is Ladini. But then you see that and you get attracted to the material world, and so basically, when the same energy flows from Krishna, then you become attracted to Krishna. But when same energy flows through your sense perceptionary energy, have pleasures that it creates through a different layer, so then you become independently happy from Krishna and run after the material realm, which is sense objects. So this is the Karmendriya and the various senses organs, and the Gyanendriya. Prana creates the Karmendriya, and the intelligence also Vasanas. Vasanas are nothing but when you first come, you are very, very reluctant to do sense gratification. You are like Brahma. You are absolutely reluctant to do, because you are a spiritual guy. You don't want to do all these material horrible things. So as soon as you keep on doing, over a period of time, you become very expert in sense gratification. So these already stored, the pleasures that you have stored is stored in the RAM, RAM, That's like in a PC you have a RAM. Immediately when you open a software, it immediately opens because that is already stored. So all the pleasures are stored in vasanas. So then, although the soul is very reluctant to enjoy in the material world, because soul is Krishna's devotee, he doesn't want to enjoy separate from Krishna in the material world. That's horrible for him. But because of the vasanas, the pleasure which is already stored, because he has already done that before, and all the memory of that is already there, he just has to click on the RAM, and the RAM will show him all the pleasures. So just by destroying these vasanas, the intelligence is the storage of that vasanas, the RAM, which stores the all the pleasures that you have experienced previously in your previous janmas and your previous things, slowly over the period of time. Then you become an expert sense gratifier. Just click on the intelligence RAM, and then when you see a girl, you'll immediately understand in one life you had enjoyed with the girl. So one of the millions of lives. And so you immediately relate what pleasures are going to come from that enjoyment with the girl or something like that. All those things will be stored here. So once these vasanas are cleared by hatha yoga or any kind of yoga or any kind of system, then you become such a pure person that it becomes very difficult for you to again enjoy all those things. So the next time you look at that, you don't want to enjoy because you are cleared. All this thing is cleared. Again, you have to create all those vasanas. So if just by clearing these vasanas or just by performing brahmacharya or some kind of thing, you can immediately attain up to brahmaloka, like the consciousness of the pure consciousness of Satyaloka. So just by clearing these vasanas, and then you will have to again go through a long period to fall down back to the level of a sense gratifier. Once you just clear these vasanas, that's that dangerous, this RAM storage, but then soul again gets used to all the horrible things. Then so it's like that. So generally soul, when he comes from the spiritual world, is very pure. It doesn't want to enjoy any of these things. So slowly it enjoys. Dhire it comes back down and falls down to the lowest level of the material world, and all this is stored later on. Once it's stored, then it's easy for him to enjoy. Immediately he can enjoy. He can do horrible things. So just like once you have illicit sex, the next time you have illicit sex, very easy. No problem. But if you don't have for a long period, then again, if it's completely cleared, then you cannot do. It's impossible for you to do all those horrible things because you are a very nice guy. So soul is always a nice guy. So this kind of structure, basically the pleasure part is completely handled by Rajoguna basically. Third part is the material world itself, basically the earth, water, air, fire, ether. So from which all the trees, all the structures, everything is created. So this is the software drivers. You have heard of driver, sound driver. There is something sound in a PC. There should be a driver. So sound driver creates the structure by which hardware, this is the mind intelligence, can interact with the software in the here sound driver. So what is happening is originally we can see we don't have a technology as advanced as this technology. This technology, what it does is sound driver creates the sky. The driver generally we have a separate code written for sound driver. We have a separate in the PC we write these codes for touch driver, and in Windows 19 or like Windows 10 operating system, we have this touch driver, sound driver. All these drivers are display driver. All these drivers are written by which we can interact with, and we can create different objects on the screen of this of the PC or something like that. So in the virtual screen server, there are various drivers which create all the structures in the universe. Basically, all the objects are created. So the drivers for the objects are. So these are the structures. These are the drivers which are driving this basic structure. So when you have a sound, but this is so advanced that the sound driver can create all other drivers like one by one, like the sound drivers, just like we have in a nowadays the technology has come by which you can just read a word, and so nowadays there is a technology by which you can read a word, like you can just we have this, we have this Alexa. We just say, "Hello Alexa, can you just help me this?" Or Siri. You speak a word, and the technology of the energy is so powerful that the word is converted into code, and that code is executed, and then that code executes other codes, just like the sound driver executes the other driver, the display driver is activated, the other activates the other drivers. So basically now also we have some technology like that, by which this sound is the original technology. Just like we have Alexa, when we just say Alexa, all the code is written automatically. Don't have to write it separately. So just simply this sound, when the moment we say this sound energy, it encompasses all other energies. So automatically the sound energy, when is activated, the sound driver is written. The driver automatically activates the sky driver for the basic structure, and then from sky driver to the sense of touch, and then air, and the element air is created from the code for the element air, which has to be written in the cloud server, is created. So the element air can be then be placed in various places, locations, and there can be a demigod for that and stuff like that. So the basic element, the driver of the air is comes from the touch. So the touch driver gives rise to the air driver, air element, and the air element creates the another driver for form, and the form driver gives rise to form itself. The various data is passed to the form driver to create forms. Just like we have a sound driver. When you pass data into the sound driver, the sound can be heard later on. The element is created from the driver. So these drivers are creating the elements for the basic structure. So the water driver creates the smell element, smell driver. The water element creates the smell driver, and the smell driver creates the earth element. So this kind of coding is not seen in the material world. Basically, one code writing another code and executing third code and creating the fourth code, that doesn't happen. We have to write separate codes for everything. But here, one code is executing all the different various codes, and that's very advanced technology. Whatever it is, technology is basically there. So this structure, so that's why, just like we say, when I'm seeing something, what do I see? Actually, what I'm seeing is the photons or the light are entering my eyes, and that eyes is sending signal to the brain. Okay, so sense of sense of my brain has a sense which sees that there is a particular signal that will be coming from the nerves. When that particular signal is that, the brain interprets that as there is a vision. So I'm just giving an example. This is not how it is done. I'm just giving an example. So basically, the sense of sight inside the brain, if I can directly create inside the sense of sight, if I can create the data without the actual object being there. For example, there is no object of a table, but I can create a data for a table and pass it into the software of the brain inside my head. Then that brain will interpret it as table. Like, for example, right now what's happening, light of the table goes, then it's converted into some data. That data goes to the brain, and the brain interprets that there is a table. Brain cannot see light. Light actually gives the data to the brain, and then the brain can actually see the things. Right now, so what is happening? The sense of light or the sense of sight, which is there inside the brain, when the data is passed into the sense of sight, actual objects are created inside of the brain. So similarly, in the similar way, in the universal structure of the thing, what is happening? The sense of touch creates air. Air doesn't create sense of touch. What we think is that light is creating, or the object is creating light. Light is going to the eyes. Eyes is creating the sense of the object. Within the object is created inside the brain. But actually what's happening, if I can pass the data of the object inside the brain directly, then from the sense of sight, I can create the object itself. So sense of touch can create air. So you can see something like that. So sense of form, which is inside the brain, can create fire, basically. By passing the data into the brain, that there is some form like this. Without the form actually existing, there can be a sense perception of form. So that kind of software exists inside the main server, which translates the data into this, and then you can see that there are virtual objects here, everything, that and this, and soul can interact. Of course, it's not done in that way, exactly the way we are done. It's a very crude example, but how the sense of touch can create actually the objects of touch, that we can understand from the example of a brain in the human body. Basically, that's how we can actually understand that. So from the sense can come the actual object. That's how it happens. Like, for example, if you think you're touching something, what's happening? The touch signal from the hand is passing into the brain. So if the brain doesn't the feeling of it's something, if you hit your brain, then you can't feel any touch, because what's happening is it's a touch is activating a certain nerve, and the nerve is activating a certain part of the brain, the touch part of the brain, and from the touch part, when the data is passed into the touch software of the brain, you feel touch. So if the data, similarly, if that part of the brain is damaged, you can't feel touch. People can't get paralyzed. They can't feel the sense of touch when that part of the brain is damaged. Similarly, if I pass the data into that part of the brain without actually touching the object, then I should be able to see I could feel as if I'm touching, but I'm not actually touching. Just by passing the data into the sense of touch, by passing the data into the sense of touch, from the touch, the actual object can be created in a virtual world. So something like that. So into the sense of touch, into the server of this universal server, from the sense of touch, the actual objects are created. By passing this data into the sense of touch, the actual objects like trees, everything are created by passing this data into the sense of touch into the server. So basically, and then you can feel those things into this from the mind into the virtual world. So you can actually see those things, see those objects. So that is all of these drivers for this material world, everything, like how the senses, these are all drivers of the software which is created. Cognitive energy of the Lord creates this. That's why it's the tamoguna, the cognitive energy which has degraded into a mode of ignorance energy, which has created this basically structure. The entire virtual world that you can see is a combination of this and this Rajoguna. What's happening is, this is they say that Rajoguna creates the world. How it creates the world? Because not only the sense pleasures are there, but how the world is arranged. That's, of course, these are the basic drivers that are written, but how the drivers will be placed so that you can have optimal sense enjoyment, and that perfect sense of pleasure will come from that particular thing arranged in a particular way. So all that is a combination. So when you actually see that this world, there is nothing pure. It's nothing pure, like nothing pure tamoguna, pure rajoguna. It's all combination. When this combines, this will decide how these objects which are created, which are sense perceptions, which are created in the 5 elements that comes from the sense perceptions, how the perceptions and the sense will be arranged in such a way that gives pleasure to the object. So pleasure, that's why the Brahmaji is creative. The creation happens through. So these are the software drivers, but the actual music is composed by, again, a combination of these drivers, sound drivers, and the music, the creative potency for music, which will give pleasure to you. So depending on what pleasure you want, that music which is suitable to the pleasure will be created. Actually, the pleasure, by hearing music, you're not having pleasure. What pleasure you already have? For soul knows what kind of pleasure from the spiritual world. That same reflection of that pleasure is created and arranged in the material world by this pleasure potency, so that the soul will feel the same kind of similar kind of pleasure. Of course, everything the soul will feel the pleasure not because of the arrangement, but because of the fact that the pleasure potency is emanating from that object. Basically, that is the one that is giving the pleasure. So it's the Ladini Shakti which is giving the pleasure for a living entity. So of course, but the way it is done in this way, like the Ladini, she will arrange how, just like Radharani, if she'll arrange her body in such a way that Krishna will be happy. In the same way, the pleasure potency will arrange the material world so that the souls can be happy or sad. So any kind of emotion, happiness, sadness, spiritual world, everything is done by Radharani. The sadness is Vipralamba, that is also Radharani. Mahabhav is Radharani. But here its duality is there, because it's all Tapakari Shakti. The Lord, it's all horrible only, the good and the bad. So the duality of pleasure and pain. But the spiritual world, pain is the greatest pleasure. So all pleasure, pain, emotion, everything is a function of this energy. So structurally, this is how this structure happens, and then this world is created, and then you start going to the material world and you start feeling all of these different interactions. So what happens is that if a person predominantly goes into Sattva Guna, what happens is that he stops having sense pleasure and the interactions of the material world, and is more focused on the reality. So when the television set, this is the television set, and these are projections on the Ahamkara layer, and so all the television movie is happening here. So if you reduce the movie, that means Tamoguna and Rajoguna, if you reduce the movie that is happening, the drivers of the sound itself, everything, if you start reducing it, you will start seeing only television, which is reality. That means you are seeing the television along with Krishna. Like you're in a theater, you're sitting with Krishna. He's the next bird, you are a bird. Both birds are sitting next to each other. They are watching the movie. One bird is engrossed in the movie, second bird is just watching the first bird. When you look at me, that's all. When will the second bird look at the first bird? When the movie stops. When there is a problem in the movie. So when the Rajoguna and Tamoguna starts, the movie of the material world, the virtual reality starts becoming less and less. The dream becomes less and less. He starts seeing reality, which is nothing but the television set. So when this is completely removed, Rajoguna completely, the Shuddha Sattva, he sees only the Lord, and him both are sitting in a cinema theater. Nothing is happening. It's just a screen, empty screen. Mind and senses are empty. Nothing is happening here. So only because the movie starts here, that he gets entangled in the movie. So similarly, when he becomes very passionate and he's very creatively, how to do this, how to do that, how to play, so that I get more pleasure, I get more this thing, so I get more relationships, I get more. So all these things is caused by passionate. When he gets totally into sense gratification and he just forgets human beings, everything, he just wants to have unlimited sexual pleasure, unlimited only sense pleasure. So what becomes predominant is sense of sound, sense of touch. He just goes into, he doesn't care about human being, he doesn't care about anything. He goes into the darkest region where he just wants to just feel the sense objects only, nothing else. No human being, no creative potency, no combination, nothing. He goes into the death, the darkest region where only what he sees is the sound drivers. I just want to enjoy the sound, the smell, the water. He's just fascinated with only the elements itself. He's trying to enjoy so much that only the elements are seen, the very driver. So he goes into the mode of ignorance where nothing but he just wants to just go into the sense pleasure to such the only elemental level he goes. At the level of a sound, he goes, enters here, and then nothing is there in this. There is no life, there is no There is no creation, nothing. There is only the basic structure of senses and the touch, the objects, which are dead objects basically. So he just gets entangled with the dead objects of the dead material world. So that's how he goes into the mode of ignorance, which is nothing but dead things like the trees. There only is a sense of touch. Finally, he goes from this sense of touch, he just goes into the last sense basically. There is nothing, there is no into the final, just like trees have only one sense, and then there is aquatics have more senses and stuff like that. So there are so many different. So finally he goes into one of these elements and just goes into that and just hibernates into this, because he's so much after that senses, the sense of touch, the sense of, he's preoccupied with the sense of touch, sense of sky, everything. So he goes into that. So once you understand this, how the spiritual energy is creating everything, and that this world is the virtual reality and this has nothing to do, and this ahankara layer in the spiritual world is Krishna actually. This layer doesn't happen. So here what we go into the virtual world, all the pleasures are coming from this layer. So our interactions with any other living entity is happening at this layer, inside the ahankara layer. So basically, so this virtual world, we react everything, and all the pleasures are flowing from this, and everything is happening through this layer. So this is nothing but our own virtual identity in the virtual world. But in the spiritual world, this ahankara is not there. It's replaced by Krishna. So Krishna is connected to all living entities, and Krishna's pleasure gives pleasure to all the living entities in this world. So there Krishna becomes happy, everybody else becomes happy. Here ahankara layer, all this structure is there. Detached, the hand is detached from the stomach. So now the hand has to be fed glucose separately. So this is the mechanism. It's like we are in a coma basically. We can say we are just like in COVID-19 situation, coronavirus, everybody's in a coma. So we are also in something like a coma, and we are just stuck in this, we are inactive state. Actually, the soul is a very sleeping in the lap Maya, and we are just stuck in this. And this is the ventilator system that has been created to give us pleasure. Basically, this is the entire system. This is the mechanical system that is created for us. So basic idea of this structure is that although it's also the same, is created by the same energy of the Lord. It's not false. It's not, you can say it's a dream because it's done it in a different way. So spiritual world is done in a different way. We have a different structure. Here we have a different structure of creation, walking, moving. Everything is different way. We do it through the ahankara layer, through the software. So it's a different way. It's not false. It's just a different style of doing. And the whole idea is that Krishna wants the styles to be different, because he knows that this material world, the moment we wake up from the dream, it should be like, it was a dream. It's okay. My Lord, now I am come back. So we should not, if it's a reality, if it's almost like reality, then the soul will feel very bad. I have done so many horrible things, my Lord, in the material world. I hated you and enjoyed sense gratification, separate from you, rasa bhasik enjoyment. How did I do that? So the very guilty feeling the soul will not be able to really re-establish the connection with Krishna again nicely. But if it was a dream, the moment we wake up from a dream, we become very easy. That's fine. That was a dream. Forget it. It was not me. It was just a dream. It was the 3 modes within the dream that made me do. I was forced in the dream to do all those things. It was not me. It was not me. So, and then you become very nice, and you immediately re-establish your relationship with your beloved Lord Krishna the moment you wake from the dream. So that's why the whole structure is like a dream, but it's not really a dream, but it's just a different way in which this whole world is created.